I guess we better listen to this next talk then.
Yes.
It's called Threat Profile, Big Brother. It's by Eric Wall from the HRF. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. So hi everyone. My name is Eric Wall. I'm a computer science engineer and cryptocurrency researcher. One of the roles that I have currently is as a privacy technology fellow at the Human Rights Foundation. So the agenda for today, like one of the things that I'm trying to help the Human Rights Foundation with is to map out the privacy landscape of cryptocurrencies. So we're going to talk about the threat profile, like what is the type of surveillance threat that we are under, and how, what does Lightning do particularly that is good in this context, but also in what ways can it be broken. So we're going to start first talking about how surveillance actually works in surveillance states. So a question to someone here in the audience. Can someone tell me how many government-owned surveillance cameras there are in China? Just to pull out a guess. Anybody? Sorry? What? Okay, well, the figure currently is 200 million, but they are planning to move in next year to 1 billion, and China has a population of 1.3 billion, so that's almost one government security camera per person. And it's not your typical security cameras. These are connected to each other in a national system that uses facial recognition and machine learning. So when you're moving from frame to frame in these cameras, if they have recognized your face in one frame, you are being tracked into the other frame. And you can see that even the cars here are being tracked because Chinese people are currently in the process of being forced to implement RFID chips in their cars so that they can be tracked wherever they go. And the purpose of this surveillance is that if you do something in any way, form, or in any shape or form bad, such as jaywalking over the street, that is going to impact your social credit score. So they want to keep track of everybody and make sure that if somebody does something, that directly impacts them in a negative way. So that's one forms of the surveillance that is going on in China right now. But I think the more intrusive surveillance that is going on is not happening out on the open streets. It's actually happening in people's cell phones. So mobile usage has exploded in China recently, and I think it has in all parts of the world, but especially in apps such as WeChat, which they use for everything. So if you want to order a car, if you want to order a taxi, if you want to order food, if you want to make a hospital appointment, it all goes through this central app. So when the Chinese government detected that people are using these mobile apps to pay for everything, now 90% of all payments are going through these apps. So what they did was that they mandated that all the transactions that are being done, it needs to go through a central surveillance system, I mean a central clearing system that the Chinese government owns so that they can monitor everything you do. And the reason for why they want to have that is that if you fail to pay an invoice, a bill in time, that's going to impact your social credit score. So here's one example of an app that is being trialed in a province in China. This map, which comes as a plugin to WeChat, if you are, it shows you on a radius if there are any people within a 500-meter radius that are deadbeat debtors, that these are people that haven't paid their debts. So the idea is that if you see somebody that is visible on this map, and you see them buying something that is non-essential to them, then you're going to whistleblow on these people and call them out to the government and sort of publicly shame them if they're doing something that they don't particularly need. So right now there's been about 15 million that have been punished under these systems, and it's not only that you're being publicly shamed, it's also they also prevent your ability to order high-speed trains to get airplane tickets, to get hotel reservations, dinner reservations. And if you look at the founding document of the social credit systems, this is an actual quote from that paper, that the scheme should allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under the heaven while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step. And they mean that literally. So why are private transactions important? So this is not China, but it's in Hong Kong. So these people that are participating in the Hong Kong protests, they have Metro cards, but they're choosing to pay in cash because they don't want to leave an audit trail to that they participated in the protests. And in the protests in 2014, the Umbrella Movement, participants in the protests were tracked down and convicted for having incited public nuisance. So it's a very big problem. So I'm going to talk about now why Lightning is good, what can Lightning do to address these issues, and how does it stick out in comparison to other privacy technologies. So if you're looking for a digital means of payment, and the first thing that you want out of that payment system is that it doesn't enforce KYC, then you got to look at cryptocurrencies, of course. But you also want a number of other features with this cryptocurrency. It's not just any cryptocurrency can work for you, because you want privacy, you want security, you want all these other beneficial things. However, it's not necessarily for that reason that you might think, because all of these things are also important for privacy. Because when we're talking about privacy, what you want to have is a large meta-anonymity set. You want a large number of users so that you don't stick out particularly by using that specific privacy technology. So I'm going to just use a short example. Let's imagine that we have a public channel that anybody can communicate over, and a lot of people are using RSA because it's very convenient. And in an RSA, you have a key exchange, you have a public key, and that allows people to send encrypted messages. But why are people using RSA? I mean, RSA, it can be potentially broken by quantum computers. So maybe it's like not the most, perhaps it isn't the best privacy-preserving technology that you can use. So why not, instead of using this theoretically decryptable means of communication, why don't you just use a Vernam cipher? A Vernam cipher scrambles your communication by having these one-time pads that are completely randomized. So if you're using that, there are no public keys, there are no key exchanges, your communication is completely private. But is it though? Because if you are communicating on an open channel and you are doing something that is out of the ordinary, if somebody is able to detect that, okay, so these guys are communicating over this channel, but they're not doing any key exchanges, so how are they actually encrypting that information? Then they stick out, and then you can do things like looking at what times of the day are these guys communicating. Are they communicating in relation to any specific events? Maybe you notice that the times of the days that they're communicating is very in alignment with Russian business hours, and they're communicating only every time a US political event happens. So then you might be thinking, okay, this seems to be some sort of activity that we need to monitor more closely. And because they don't have any key exchange, maybe they're exchanging these one-time pads in such a way that we can find those one-time pads and decrypt the information. So just by doing something that is out of the ordinary, you are ruining your privacy if that is not the method that is very popular. So like the general idea is that even if you have a system that theoretically produces no trail of what you're actually communicating about, it's not the best way to preserve privacy. So you wanna, even if you have a flawed or vulnerable means of preserving your privacy, it's still better if you're a large group using that type of privacy preserving mechanism. So let's take another more practical example that relates to cryptocurrency. So these are a number of cryptocurrencies that you could use. And let's say that you read on the internet that PivX is the most legit one because it uses zero knowledge proofs. And I read somewhere that they used to say that they have the largest amount of coins in the shielded pool, which is an attribute of zero knowledge coins. That doesn't have mandatory privacy. So they used to say that like, we have the largest anonymity set in crypto, so you should use us. However, So let's go back to our example. Like you want to buy a train ticket, and you're going to be really clever this time, and you're going to use PivX. So what the merchant sees is that, okay, we have 500 people that bought tickets that participated in protest, and there's one guy who used PivX. So then you can do some like very basic investigative research here, and you can look at the amount of transactions that are actually happening in PivX, and it's 200 people. So there are 400 cities in the world, and there are just 200 PivX transactions. So that guy that made that PivX transaction is probably the only guy in that city making PivX transactions whatsoever. So then they can continue this police work, and they go to Binance and they ask, so Binance, is there anybody that bought a PivX coin sometime? And then they say, yeah, this is all our Hong Kong people that bought PivX coins. And then they look at these people and they say, okay, so which one is in that particular city? Well, it's probably that guy then that did that transaction. And if you're using an OTC service, then they can find that OTC dealer and they can force him to carry a wire next time you meet him. So you're not really getting any privacy at all out of using this PivX coin. So it's that guy apparently. I don't know why I put it. It wasn't that guy, but it could have been. So what Bitcoin has that's really great is that it has the largest number of users. So it has the potential to have the largest meta-anonymity set. Even something like Monero is way below Bitcoin in the amount of usage. So this is why Bitcoin is interesting from a privacy perspective. Obviously, Bitcoin on-chain, if the fees are high, it still costs a lot of money to be doing these Wasabi type of transactions. So, but Lightning, if Lightning works as a privacy technology, it has the potential to leverage this very large meta-anonymity set of Bitcoin users. And also it has a lot of nice other attributes, like it's censorship-resistant coin, it has the lowest amount of volatility, it's something that people can hold on to, you can get it in ATMs. The Bitcoin users are a large group, and there are a lot of other nice things with using Bitcoin. So if we can make it private, that's really, really good for privacy. But of course, even if you're using Lightning with Bitcoin right now, you're still kind of making yourself more visible, because Lightning this is with Bitrefill, and they're probably like the most popular Lightning company that people are buying stuff with, and Lightning is even now like smaller than Ethereum and at the same level as Litecoin. So, but like Lightning has the potential to eat from this larger on-chain Bitcoin user group to become to have this large meta-anonymity set. So now I'm going to try to break that whole justification by telling you why Lightning is bad for privacy, because it's not that easy. We're still going to need to do particular things in order to maintain our privacy. So imagine that this is a Lightning network, and from the outside, if you are now the Chinese surveillance state that are trying to figure out who's paying who and what are they buying in the system, from the outside it's kind of hard. I know that Christian Decker spoke earlier that it is possible to use some heuristics to see which channels are being opened or related to Lightning, even if the channel openings are collaborative and you don't have these complex scripts that are being showed on-chain. But it's still, even with that, it's still difficult to figure out what people are doing. So what you should try to do is insert yourself in the network. But if you are like in the middle of the graph here, then you're just seeing, because of the Sphinx, the onion routing, the only thing that you're seeing is the amounts and the times that transactions are happening. You're not really knowing that you don't know what the endpoints are of these transactions. So that doesn't really help you very much. However, the one thing that we can leverage here, that the state actor could leverage, is that liquidity in Lightning is a scarce resource. So that creates a situation where if you can insert yourself, if you can leverage that fact that liquidity is a scarce resource, and you provide this liquidity, if it's inbound liquidity that you're providing, or if it's outbound liquidity, as long as you have lower fees than anybody else, and you have very good access to the rest of the network, you have the possibility to become a very popular routing node. Or I call these like gateways. And if you are a gateway and you have private channels, a lot of private channels to you, you know that those private channels are probably not routing traffic that is coming from other people. It's probably those, the private channels that you have connected to you. When transactions come from them, you know that these transactions are probably coming from the same person. So before we get into this, like even before this happens, if somebody connects to you, you want to collect as much information about those people as possible. So if you have a service like LNBig or Bitrefill, Thor, you want to keep track of everybody that is visiting your website. And if you can get them to follow you on Twitter, if you can get them to sign up to your newsletter, anything that you can do, you want to look at who's looking at your service, who is interested in you, and just keep a database of that. And when they're opening channels, maybe it's one of those guys. So you're just trying to collect as much information as possible. And if they are asking for inbound liquidity from you so that they can receive payments over Lightning, what are they paying you with for that? If they're paying you, like, are they using credit cards? Are they using Bitcoin? Then use Chainalysis. If they're using Zcash, well, it doesn't have that big of an anonymity set. So just keep track of who's paying you with what and try to de-anonymize them from that. And if they are providing you with outbound liquidity, then you want to look at the UTXOs. Like, what are the UTXOs that they are using to fund this channel? So once you have that, now you should probably, for some of these people, like I imagine that if LNBig or Bitrefill really tried, they could probably have a good understanding about 90% of the users, like some data point on who they are. So once you've done that, what you really want to do is you want to put different colors on each of these people, and you just want to log everything. Every transaction that they do that goes through, you want to make sure that you log that. And here's the big problem. If we imagine that this is in China, and this is a surveillance, a state actor that is surveilling you, the merchants in this system are not necessarily your friends. The merchants also, like in a capitalist system, merchants want to sell your data. They want to also log all the transactions that they are receiving. And if you're in China and you're standing in front of a payment, something that you are paying, you have a camera on your face that knows who you are. And if the routing operator, if the gateway knows exactly the time and the amount that you are paying, and you see this popping up in a payment terminal somewhere else, then if you just fuck up once, if you just screw this up once, then this purple guy, just that you were able to link his identity to that payment, it links him to all the other payments that he made on that channel. So this is the problem with Lightning, is that we are bound to, like, people are using channels, and those channels, these private channels, are emitting all transactions, and they can be linked to the same individual. So that's a very big problem. So how you need to start thinking about these gateways are like VPNs. We need to start thinking about, so when we're using VPNs, we're very concerned that they are protecting our privacy. We want to make sure that they're not keeping logs and they're not a part of a surveillance system. But if you remember, has anybody heard of Monkey Rocket? So Monkey Rocket was an initiative by the NSA to provide a VPN system for Bitcoin users. So they did that just in order to create a honeypot to collect information on Bitcoin users. So that's likely going to happen if the Chinese government want to surveil Lightning users. They're going to create this very privacy preserving routing operators, and this can be something like async. Wallet providers can be complicit in this type of thing. I'm not saying that the async is doing this, but we need to think very carefully about these gateways because they are able to get a lot of data on us. So what can we do about this problem? So the way that I see it is that you probably want to connect to multiple of these systems, and you want to use AMP. So when you're making a transaction, you're not using only one of them because then you have the specific amount that you paid. But if you are splitting up those amounts and paying them through different gateways, then they don't know for sure, like, okay, you paid this amount, but the merchant received that amount. I don't know if that transaction actually was the one that went to the merchant. Also, you want to make decoy payments. I saw Alex Bosworth spoke previously about circular rebalancing, you want to use that just so that you are causing a lot of false positives. But the main point that I want to bring home here is that, again, if you are doing something to preserve your privacy that is out of the ordinary, then you're already sticking out in a particular way, which makes it possible to track you. So this is already something that Lightning Wallet developers has to think about today, to build privacy now so that we don't end up in a situation where if you want to use Lightning in a privacy-centric way, then you are exposing yourself or being able to be tracked just by having this unique behavior. So that was it. I'm announcing a lab that I've built. It's my entire research archive that I've been building for about 2 years now. You're going to be able to buy, look into this archive, paying invoices. Maybe you don't want to read specifically this Falkvinger's criticism because it's not that interesting. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm out of time. I don't believe I have time for questions. All right. Yeah, so that's my PGP key. I've never received a message on PGP, like ePGP encrypted ever. So if somebody want to send me something, I would be really, really happy. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric.